Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister Criswell, for testifying here today. As I reminded your predecessor, Administrator Gaynor, our committee has jurisdiction over all of FEMA's Stafford Act responsibilities, which obviously are vast and of extraordinary importance and growing importance with the disasters invoked by climate change. So I want to, you've got a big job ahead. You bring good credentials to the job, but I've got to say there's a lot of work to do. Having heard from members representing devastated areas in previous disasters, and myself last year with the extraordinary fires here in Oregon, including in my district. It looks like I'm frozen up here. Hopefully this is coming through well. I'm in my office and I don't know what's with the Wi-Fi. But one of the connect somewhere in the public assistance pipeline where bureaucracy seems to stifle the efforts on the ground. Many of the FEMA folks I've met on the ground are doing an extraordinary job and trying to help those who've been impacted. But somewhere further up the food chain and the bureaucracy, things get messy or delayed. I've experienced that personally here in Oregon, and particularly not in my district, but in the district south of mine, with assistance programs that were very, very slowly implemented. So there's a lot of concern about the logjam in the public assistance pipeline. The agency is, you've got a lot of eligible, worksheets to work on. I mean, there's a whole glut of them, but the pace at which they're being adjudicated is daunting, maddening, and and very, very much a hardship for the applicants. But despite the backlog, I'm glad we're able to ensure the agency had resources necessary to provide assistance. Worked hard on CARES, end of the year 21 omnibus, and this year's American Rescue Plan. The only two times I can recall Congress allocating FEMA more and as quickly was after 9/11 and the 2005 hurricane system with Katrina, Rita, and Wilmer. And the share of FEMA's assistance overall, is for disaster is infinitesimal compared to public assistance, yet individual assistance is seemingly bureaucratic and even more exasperating. You got a letter from, which for me, Chair Titus, Ranking Member Graves, and Ranking Member Webster, regarding confusion even for basic determinations of eligibility for individual assistance and the drastic differences which have now been noted between survivors' individual assistance awards for very similar types of damage in the same disaster. So there's a problem, and it's pretty much a black box to us. And I hope we'll get some more insight into that today and in the future. We can't get details, for things as simple as full lists of questions posed to survivors, copies of form letters used by the agency to communicate throughout the process. I want to prevent fraud, but there's got to be a way to balance between the widespread fraud after '05 and where we are today. And when survivors have lost virtually everything, they shouldn't have to go through such a torturous process. I appreciate that you've discussed within the agency the importance of ensuring more equity for survivors and within FEMA and their workforce itself. And I want to know more about how you're going to improve in those areas. And then finally, one more priority of the committee. is, as was mentioned by both who spoke before me, the pre-disaster mitigation. Uh, we're all very proud of what we did on a very bipartisan basis in the DRRA Disaster Recovery Reform Act in 18. And, we were pleased to hear about the upcoming notice of funding opportunity for building resilient infrastructure and communities program, doubling it from 500 to a billion. It's a great step. But last year, the interest in the BRIC funding outstripped available resources by 3 billion. So this is another area where the chairs and ranking members sent a letter to your predecessor based on the calculations of disaster relief during the first 6 months of the pandemic. FEMA should have placed $3.2 billion into the pre-disaster mitigation set aside. Instead, the Trump administration only set aside 500 million. So that means there's yet another 1.7 billion in authority you have to commit to pre-disaster mitigation from the COVID declarations alone, which could result in, at a minimum, by calculations that are well documented, a 4-to-1 return. And we will look for any way we can to provide additional funding for these cost-effective investments so we can achieve our shared goal of building a more disaster resilient nation. Later in questions, I'll bring up concerns I have about coordination between SBA, HUD, and FEMA in the hope that we can deal with that morass into which many people fall. So thanks again for your testimony, your time, and the expertise you bring to this agency. You have massive challenges ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.